The sun had yet to rise over Manhattan, and the city's towers still shimmered under the last whispers of night. Inside one of those glass giants, the silence was broken only by the low buzz of fluorescent lights warming to life. Amira moved through the 38th floor like a shadow, silent, efficient, invisible. After nearly 20 years of cleaning offices, she'd grown used to being unseen. People rarely looked past her uniform or asked her name. That was fine. She wasn't here to be noticed. Each night was the same: empty trash cans, wiped desks, vacuumed carpets. But this morning, something made her pause. The CEO's office, larger than most New York apartments, stood still and cold. Through the glass, she could see the polished wood desk buried in documents, a coffee cup growing mold in its base, and a picture frame turned face down. She'd never met the man behind the title, but she'd heard things. Ruthless, brilliant, burned out. Amira stepped inside softly. As she straightened the desk, her eyes fell on her cleaning cart where her old paperback copy of The Alchemist peeked out from beneath a duster. It was her favorite book. She'd read it dozens of times during breaks, clinging to its quiet messages of destiny, faith, and following one's dreams. She stared at it, then at the CEO's desk. Something stirred inside her, without quite knowing why. She picked up the book, ran her fingers over the worn cover, and placed it on the desk. From her pocket, she pulled a sticky note and scribbled a message: "For when you forget to dream. A friend." She hesitated for just a second, then left the office and closed the door behind her. She didn't expect anything to come of it. It was just a moment, a small, quiet gesture from someone whose life had taught her that sometimes the smallest kindness could travel the furthest. Maybe he'd never even see it. Maybe he'd toss it in the trash without a second glance. But maybe, just maybe, he'd read it, and maybe it would make a difference, even if just for a moment. As Amira continued her rounds, the city outside began to wake. She pushed her cart down the hall, the scent of lemon polish trailing in her wake, her footsteps silent but sure. She had done something brave in her own quiet way, and even if no one noticed, her heart felt a little lighter. The next evening, Amira arrived at the office just as she always did, quietly, a few minutes early, unnoticed among the humming vending machines and flickering hallway lights. She clocked in, adjusted her gloves, and reached for her cleaning cart. It was routine, mechanical. The moment with the book already felt distant, almost foolish. What had she been thinking? As she pushed her cart toward the elevator, the young receptionist at the front desk, someone who'd never spoken more than a polite nod to her, stood up abruptly. "Ms. Amira?" she called. Amira blinked, surprised to hear her name. "Yes? The CEO wants to see you, right now, in his office." Her heart thudded. She froze. The handle of the cart felt slick in her hand. Did I do something wrong? Did he think it was disrespectful? A rush of fear and regret flooded her chest. She nodded silently and stepped into the elevator, the slow climb to the top floor feeling like a judgment. She rehearsed apologies in her head. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean anything by it. Or maybe it was just a book, something that helped me once." Her hands trembled as she smoothed her uniform, trying to quiet the storm inside her. The doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped out onto the executive floor, where the carpet was thicker, the silence deeper. She knocked gently. A voice from inside responded, "Come in." Amira entered slowly, eyes downcast. The office looked different at night, less intimidating, more human somehow. And there, silhouetted against the towering windows, stood Jack Donovan, the CEO himself. The same sharp suit, the same commanding presence, but his expression wasn't harsh. It was warm, and in his hand He held the alchemist. "You left this?" he asked, his voice gentle, curious. Amira looked up, her throat dry. She nodded. He studied her for a moment, then smiled. Not a polite corporate smile, but something softer. "I stayed late last night. Couldn't sleep. I saw the note. I read the whole thing." He paused, holding up the book. "I didn't realize how much I needed this." Amira stood frozen, unsure of what to say. In all her years cleaning rooms filled with power and decisions, no one had ever spoken to her like this, certainly not the man at the top. And yet here he was, changed by a story she loved, a story she dared to share. The office was so still. Amira could hear the soft tick of the wall clock and the faint hum of the city below. Jack Donovan motioned to a chair across from his desk, and for a moment, Amira hesitated, then sat down, hands clasped tightly in her lap. She'd never imagined herself in this room, much less like this. Jack set the book gently on the desk between them. His eyes, once known for their sharpness in boardrooms, now held something else, weariness and something softer beneath it. "I've been thinking about quitting," he said, the words landing like a quiet confession. "Not publicly, not yet, but I was done, burned out, tired of chasing numbers, tired of this place, tired of myself." He let out a breath that sounded years overdue. "I stayed late that night because I didn't want to go home. I thought maybe if I buried myself in reports, I'd forget how lost I felt. Then I saw your note, and the book." He tapped its worn cover gently. "I started reading, thinking it would distract me, but it didn't just distract me. It brought something back, something I forgot along the way." He looked up at her. Purpose, wonder, hope. That kid inside me who used to dream bigger than this building. Amira said nothing, unsure if words would help, but her silence seemed to invite more. "I couldn't stop reading. I stayed until sunrise. When the light came in through that window," he gestured behind him, "I realized I didn't want to walk away. I just wanted to remember why I started. That book. You saved something in me." He leaned forward, his voice quieter now. "How did you know? How could you see what I'd forgotten?" Amira met his gaze gently, her voice low but steady. "Sometimes," she said, "the heart sees more than the eyes. People show things without meaning to. You just looked tired, like someone who hadn't felt joy in a long time." There was a long silence between them, comfortable for once. Jack nodded slowly. "Well, you saw something no one else did, and you gave without expecting anything back." A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "That matters more than you know." The conference hall buzzed with idle chatter and the shuffle of chairs. It was one of those routine all-staff meetings, mandatory, predictable. Employees gathered with coffee in hand, expecting quarterly updates, performance slides, maybe a pep talk. Nothing more. Amira stood in the back, as she always did when she was asked to help clean afterward. She didn't expect to be seen, let alone heard. She wiped down a coffee spill quietly as the CEO took the stage. Jack Donovan looked different, not just in the casual blazer and open collar, but in his energy. He seemed lighter, more present. The room quieted as he began to speak. "I want to start today by telling you a story," he said, scanning the crowd. And then he said her name. Amira Khalid. She froze, cloth still in hand, certain she'd misheard. Heads turned. Someone pointed gently. "That's you," whispered a voice nearby. Slowly, uncertainly, Amira made her way to the front. Her heart pounded. Why would he? Why now? Jack met her with a kind smile and gestured for her to stand beside him. Then he turned to the crowd. "A few weeks ago, I was going through one of the hardest periods in my life. Burned out, disconnected. Honestly, I was ready to walk away from everything I'd built." He paused, then lifted a familiar, dog-eared paperback from the podium. This book showed up on my desk anonymously with a note that simply read, "For when you forget to dream." "A friend." "That friend," he said, placing a hand lightly on Amira's shoulder, "was someone most of us walked past every day. Someone who saw me clearly when I couldn't even see myself." The room was silent now. No phones, no whispers. Just quiet awe. She reminded me that leadership isn't always top-down. Sometimes the most powerful acts come from the quietest places. Then his voice lifted. "Today, I'm proud to announce a new initiative. The Human Moments Fund, a program dedicated to recognizing and uplifting the often unseen members of our team, whose small acts of humanity keep our company alive." Applause began to build. "And our first recipient," he said, turning to her, "is Amira. We're giving her a full scholarship to pursue what she once told me was her quiet dream, becoming a writer." The room erupted. Amira stood, stunned, tears forming in her eyes as the crowd rose in a standing ovation. In all her years, she had never been applauded, never been seen like this. But now, the whole room saw her, and more importantly, she saw herself. The city had changed its coat again. Autumn leaves fluttered past brick buildings, and warm light spilled from shop fronts onto the sidewalk. In the window of a small independent bookstore near Union Square, a modest display caught the eye of passers-by. At the center stood a single book, its cover simple but striking. The title, "When No One Is Watching" by Amira Khalid. Inside, a quiet crowd had gathered, some in folding chairs, others standing along the walls. A soft hush settled as Amira, poised at the front, adjusted the microphone. She was no longer in a janitor's uniform, but in a modest blouse and cardigan, her posture nervous but graceful. Jack Donovan sat near the back, unnoticed by most, a quiet smile on his face. He didn't need a spotlight tonight. This was hers. Amira cleared her throat gently and opened her book to a marked page. Her voice was soft but steady. Kindness may not echo loudly, but it lands where it's most needed, even in the heart of a stranger. It doesn't wear a suit or ask for recognition. It leaves a note, offers a hand, shares a story, and sometimes, if you're lucky, it saves you before you realize you were lost. She looked up briefly, eyes scanning the room. This story began with silence, with being unseen. But I've learned something. Even in silence, you can speak loudly through compassion. A quiet pause followed. Then, as if moved by one collective breath, the crowd rose. No fanfare, just reverence. Some wiped away tears. Others held their hands over their hearts. Jack stood too, clapping, proud not of what he'd given, but what she had always carried. The heart to see, the courage to act, and now, the voice to tell the story. In a room filled with people, one woman who was once invisible now stood fully in the light, and the story she shared would echo far beyond its pages.